Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing the number one draft strategy from the 6th overall spot in a 12-team 2023 fantasy football team. Inside of today's video, we're going to be going over my targets from round 1 all the way up until round number 10, as well as discussing some late round options I want you guys to target. And then after that, we're going to dive deep into a mock draft and show off how I would actually do things from the 6th overall spot. And the mock draft obviously adds some randomness to things, because obviously when you're just going off of an average draft position sheet, nothing crazy is going to happen. It's just going to be very basic. But before we can get on into this, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into this 12-team draft strategy from the 6th overall spot. So we are going to be using the ADP from ESPN, Sleeper, NFL, and RT Sports average together. The first round should be, I pointed the wrong way, should be on your screen right now. So in terms of ADP at pick number 6, the ADP pick is Cooper Kupp. For me, I lean with Tyreek Hill over Cooper Kupp. It really is a coin flip. Right now, Cooper Kupp is dealing with an injury. It does seem like he's going to be healthy by the start of the season, but as of right now, I definitely feel more comfortable drafting Tyreek. I had Tyreek ranked ahead of Cooper Kupp anyways. I love this Dolphins offense this season. I think Tua Tagovailoa, if he's able to stay healthy, Tyreek can easily be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. There are some other picks I would consider, though. If you wanted to go running back, Bijan Robinson would be the answer for me. I think he has number 1 running back upside. This is a team that wants to run the ball at an incredibly high rate, and Bijan was drafted highly to do that. And if maybe Kupp and Hill weren't there, then Eckler would be the pick if Eckler somehow fell that far, but that seems pretty unlikely in these more wide receiver heavy drafts. Moving now to the second round, pick number 19. At ADP, the pick is Jonathan Taylor. That feels kind of gross right now. Jonathan Taylor does not seem like he necessarily wants to be back with the team. He came back to the team, but yesterday or today, it was kind of reported that he's taken personal days. Who knows what's going on? Right now, Jonathan Taylor has the X, like fucking Dez Bryant. Throw up the red X. Don't draft him right now. I think he's going to not hold out, but I'm a little bit scared. My pick, a guy who I don't think is actually going to hold out, would end up being Josh Jacobs, but I get if you want to be very safe, right? I think Josh Jacobs is going to be force-fed the rock down his throat, but there's obviously a scenario where the season plays out, and Josh Jacobs isn't getting as many opportunities as I would have hoped, or maybe he just doesn't show up. So if you're really scared about that, then go with Amon-Ra or Tony Pollard. I think either of those guys are great options right now. I do have Tony Pollard ranked ahead of Josh Jacobs, but if Josh Jacobs was to stop holding out, I would throw Josh Jacobs ranked ahead of Tony Pollard. And then if you don't like any of those picks, I like Jalen Waddle a ton as well in the second round. Even with Tyreek Hill, I probably wouldn't draft them on the same team in redraft, but I do think if you didn't get Tyreek in the first round, Jalen Waddle's a very acceptable pick in the second. Moving to the third round, pick number 30. In terms of ADP, T. Higgins is the pick. I like T. Higgins a ton, but I have recently had a love affair for Calvin Ridley. This Jacksonville offense is going to be on fire, NBA Jam style. They're going to be bending defenses over the table. Calvin Ridley has looked incredible, impeccable in all of these training camp clips, and I am a big fan of Calvin Ridley this season. I think he is going to shock every single person who is fading him right now. In terms of if a player falls, Mark Andrews to me is a staple pick inside of the third round, especially if he falls to the middle of the third round. That's like an insta-click. While I am not as in love with drafting Kelsey super early, like the 5th overall pick in a 12-team league, Stevenson, or Mark Andrews, for me, in that third round, the positional advantage, having that elite tight end, super important in the third round, and I think he could outscore Kelsey. Probably not, but he could. Other players I also like, Ramondre Stevenson, if he was to fall, I would be kind of happy selecting him. I know a lot of people are panicking. Their panties are in a bunch because they signed Ezekiel Elliott, but I'm just not as worried. Sure, he's going to get vultured every once in a while, but I think Stevenson will be just fine. For other picks, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has a lot of upside this year in a great Detroit Lions offense. Moving now to the 4th round, pick 43. The ADP pick is Keenan Allen. My pick is going to be Keenan Allen. Love this Chargers offense. Keenan Allen is getting old. He can't stay healthy. Well, if you actually look at his last couple of seasons outside of last year, he has been pretty healthy. This is a great offense. Justin Herbert, the pervert. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 1, quarterback 1. Great situation to be a part of. If a player falls, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper. Again, I already got down on my knees and gave Ridley the Gawk Gawk 9000. Amari Cooper, I like him because I think this Cleveland Browns offense is going to bounce back, and I'm a big fan of Deshaun Watson this season. Justin Fields would be another pick. If you wanted to go quarterback, maybe you didn't get one of the big 3 earlier on, Justin Fields would be a big target of mine. I think that Justin Fields has quarterback 1 upside. This is a great thing for Justin Fields. They bring in DJ Moore. They got a better offensive line. Justin Fields can juke defenders out of his socks by running. Rushing quarterbacks inherently just have so much upside in fantasy. I know in real life, Fields might not be all that great of a quarterback, but in fantasy football, he is one of the best options. Round 5, pick 54, ADP pick is Darren Waller. I love Darren Waller. I am a Darren Waller truther. I talked about him in the video earlier today. Tight ends that I love, but my, oh my, in the 5th round, that's a little high for me. My pick would be Christian Watson. A lot of people panicking about Jordan Love. They worry that this Packers offense isn't going to be all that great. I think even if the Packers offense on paper sucks donkey cock, Christian Watson will still end up being a viable fantasy option. If a player falls, D-Hop, DJ Moore you could consider over Christian Watson, but I would rather actually have Christian Watson over Moore and DeAndre Hopkins. In terms of other picks, if you really felt like you need to reach on a running back, I like Akers and I like James Conner, but I would hope that they would fall back to me in the 6th round because it's a lot more palatable to select either of those guys in the 6th round. Moving to the 6th round, pick 67, ADP pick J.K. Dobbins. I've talked about this a bunch. I'm not really all that in on J.K. Dobbins. He is back at training camp, though, so that's positive news for him. I just worry that Todd Monken is going to make this offense a lot more pass-heavy, and then Dobbins might kind of fall out of favor. My pick is going to be Tyler Lockett in my pocket. Skirt. I know they drafted JSN. I know Geno Smith is far from the best quarterback, and Lockett is not going to be very consistent, but there's something about if you drafted, for instance, 2 receivers in the first 5 rounds. Very normal to start that way. If Lockett is your wide receiver 3, this is a guy you can throw into your flex or your wide receiver 3 spot who has the upside to any given week, put the team on his back, have a huge game. Sure, he's not going to be consistent. He's going to have some down games, but the upside is what I really like. If a player falls, I'm a big fan of Madison, and I think Dalvin Cook, I don't want to draft him in the 5th round, but if he falls to me in the 6th round, I think early on the season, he's going to be incredibly useful while they kind of use the just the tip technique and ease Breece Hall back. In terms of other picks, Chris Godwin, Javonte Williams, pretty interesting. Javonte's value, though, is going to continue to get steamed up, especially if we see in that preseason game this weekend if Javonte Williams can actually cut or if he can just run straight. Obviously, if he can't cut and he kind of looks like he can just run in a straight fucking line, then there's reason to panic. Round 7, pick 78. ADP pick is James Cook, who would also be my pick. I want to get a piece of this Buffalo Bills offense. I think that James Cook could end up being the lead back on the team. Seen a lot of positive reports out of training camp. Looked really good in that preseason action week 1. Again, don't fucking overreact, blow your load to what happens in preseason game 1, but it was promising how good he looked. Incredibly efficient last season as well. Now, for this round, if a player falls, I actually just like the players that are going later better than the ones that would fall. This is kind of a gross round for me earlier in round 7. So for me, the other picks would be guys going later, Deontay Johnson or Michael Pittman, both huge volume guys in their respective offenses, and I think people are really sleeping on them. Round 8, we move to the ADP pick at pick 91, Pat Freiermuth. Again, in this kind of range, we talk about the tight ends. Just give me a different one, right? Freiermuth, Njoku, Higbee, what the fuck's the difference? And they go most of the time within like a 4-round difference. I'd rather just have the guy going later. My pick is Jordan Addison Ray. I know he's dealing with a concussion right now, but nothing to panic about, right? It's so early on. It's not like we're 3 days away from the season. We still got like 23 days left. If a player falls, you don't have a quarterback, I'm going Tua. Big upside in this Dolphins offense. Two of the fastest receivers, some of the fastest running back duos in the NFL. Sure, they lost Mike Gesicki to the Patriots, but they have Chosen Anderson, they have Cedric Wilson, they have Braxton Berrios, they have other options for Tua to throw the ball to, and then David Montgomery. If he falls into the 8th round, I would actually jizz in my pants like that Lonely Island song. David Montgomery has huge upside in this Lions offense. We saw them use a goal line back last year with Jamal Williams, and they paid David Montgomery probably to do the exact same thing. Other picks would be Jamal Williams, who we just mentioned in that Saints offense. First couple of games without Kamara should be huge. And then Jahan Dotson of the Washington Commanders in this new system with Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. I believe pretty heavily in him, and I am interested to see how things go with Sam Howell, because if Sam Howell is better than I think, then maybe this offense is going to run really hot. Round 9, pick 102, ADP pick is Khalil Herbert. My pick, Khalil Herbert, should be the running back 1 in Chicago. Now, obviously, he's not going to be a workhorse back. They're going to work in the other guys like Roschon Johnson behind him, but Khalil Herbert seemed to be the number 1 guy in that preseason action. He played every single snap when Justin Fields was out there. That is very telling to me. If the player falls, I like Michael Thomas. Fucking sue me. Sue me. He's fallen to the 9th round. I'm taking him. I get that he might be catastrophic to my team, but this is a fantasy team. This is not a real life team. I don't need to worry about the locker room, right? There's some locker room guys. Like Odell doesn't seem like the best locker room guy. Michael Thomas doesn't seem like the best locker room guy, but there's no locker room in fantasy football. Michael Thomas, the slant man, if he stays healthy, I think he could surprise a lot of people and finish really high at wide receiver. But if he stays healthy, that's a huge question mark, right? Definitely not a safe pick, but as you get deeper and deeper into the draft, I'm willing to take more risks. Other picks, Antonio Gibson or Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet is the number 2 running back on the Seattle Seahawks. Kenneth Walker should be good to go by week 1, but I think Charbonnet is going to cut a lot into his role, and if something happened to Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet would be a league winner. Antonio Gibson, super safe player week in and week out for the left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders. Pick 10, round 10, pick 115. ADB pick is Anthony Richardson. I like Richardson a ton, but I will acknowledge if you draft Richardson, I'm drafting a second quarterback. I don't like in redraft drafting 2 quarterbacks, but I have to with Richardson because I don't know if I want to roll him out there week 1. I just don't think I could do that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below, right? It's first ever game. I don't really want to do that. My pick would be Zay Flowers, who I think will end up being the number 1 receiver for the Ravens. Going to take some time, going to be a guy you got to hold on your bench, but I think that could pay off in a big way. If a player falls, Zach Charbonnet, we already talked about him. And then other picks, Devin 2 Chains of the Dolphins. I think that this is a guy that's going to be pretty unreliable week in and week out, but this is a guy that can make one cut, make one defender miss, and the guy is so fucking fast. He's like Jordan Addison driving away from the cops. He is going to get away quickly, even though Jordan Addison obviously didn't get away. Quentin Johnston as well on the Chargers. If something happens to Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston would end up as just a weekly top 24 receiver in my rankings. Now we go to the late rounds, nothing on the screen, but these are just the targets later in drafts. If you don't have a tight end, I'm going Tyler Higbee. The Rams don't have a great receiver core, but behind Cooper Kupp, Higbee should be the number 2 target. Receivers, I don't get why Elijah Moore falls this far. He's a smash in Cleveland. Sky with 2 Wise Moore, great situation in KC to be the number 1 receiver. Jalen Hyatt could be the number 1 in New York, super fast. Nico Collins in Houston should be the number 1. And then Romeo Doubs, I think, is going to be a playmaker in Green Bay. But note, there's obviously some worries about Jordan Love, and then Wiki DJ Chark, my shot of the Carolina Panthers wide receiver 1. For running backs, Tank Bigsby, Jalen Warren, Ezekiel Elliott, and Leonard Fournette. And then quarterbacks, if you really wait, Geno Smith or Jared Goff would be my options for that. But before we can pivot into the mock draft section, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Manscaped. As draft season approaches, don't neglect the most important draft pick of them all, your game balls. We all know how injuries can ruin a season, so let Manscaped take care of that Reggie Bush of yours with their skin-safe technology. This should guarantee that you have a smooth ride into the playoffs. The leader in the below-the-waist grooming technology have a championship lineup with their Performance Package 4.0, and it's time for you to do the same. Join the 9 million million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping using code Notorious. Now, we have all had that scenario where before your lady friend or your guy friend comes over, you gotta go shave down there, and sometimes maybe things go wrong, right? It looks like there's been a massacre in your shower when you go to shave. Well, that won't be a problem when you use Manscaped. So again, guys, make sure that you get 20% off plus free shipping with code Notorious at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code Notorious at manscaped.com. It is time to put the PP back in PPR and get a grip on your pigskin this season with Manscaped. Moving now to the mock draft. Yesterday in our first overall pick draft strategy, we used Sleeper. In this video, we're going to use Fantasy Pros. Again, 12-team PPR mock draft, obviously from the 6th overall spot. Roster positions, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots, with the positional value of wide receivers boosted from normal to high, because this year, unlike in prior seasons, the wide receivers go a lot earlier and a lot more often in drafts. So the draft begins: Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, and Saquon Barkley. So for me here, it would be between 3 different players. It would be between Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, and Bijan Robinson. I do have Tyreek Hill ranked the highest out of this group, and that is who I will be going with here. I believe the Miami Dolphins offense is going to be outstanding yet again in 2023, and if Tua Tagovailoa is able to stay healthy, the true upside of Tyreek Hill will be unleashed. This is a guy that could finish as the wide receiver 1, get over 2,000 receiving yards. I expect a huge season out of Hill. After Tyreek, we see Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Bijan Robinson, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mark Andrews, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, and Patrick Mahomes. I love Mark Andrews more than most people, but I'm not taking him in the early second. He's definitely a very last pick in the second round or a third round pick for me. So we got Tyreek on the team. Looking at the wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith. Looking at the running backs, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson. I simply cannot miss out on the value of Tony Pollard. I really think Tony Pollard should almost be in consideration to be a first round pick in fantasy football drafts. He's going to see so much volume in this Dallas Cowboys offense. Had Tony Pollard not been available, it would have been up in the air between potentially going with Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs at that spot. If not, I would have leaned with Jalen Waddle or Garrett Wilson. So after Pollard, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Aaron Jones, Jalen Hurts, Ramondre Stevenson, and Najee Harris. Sadly, we will not be able to get one of those big 3 quarterbacks. Not the biggest of deals, but it really does feel like in a lot of these more casual leagues, potentially Hurts, Allen, and Mahomes might all be gone by the time you pick in the 3rd round, and they might even be gone by the end of the 2nd round. Right? Because there's going to be leagues where some crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube takes Mahomes in the 1st round or something crazy like that. So our team right now, Tony Pollard, Tyreek Hill, very balanced start to the draft. The running backs here, I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm starting to sour a little on Joe Mixon based upon this trial stuff that's going on. That kind of scares me. So we're probably just going to lean wide receiver with this pick. Best receivers available: Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Keenan Allen, and T. Higgins. You could really go with any of them there, as well as Calvin Ridley. I'm interested to see if Calvin Ridley's ADP is really going to start to move up. To me, he should be considered a 3rd round pick widely by every fantasy website, but that just isn't the case right now. This time around, I think we are going to go a different way. Instead of Calvin Ridley, we're going to go with Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles, the 1B to A.J. Brown's 1A. This is going to be one of the best offenses in the National Football League yet again, but if I'm being honest with you, it is really close between all those guys. I have Calvin Ridley actually ranked the highest, but between Ridley, Cooper, Higgins, Olave, it really is kind of just pick your favorite guy, and the reason why I didn't go with Ridley was I did think there was a chance he fell back to us at the 4.07. After Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy. The 4th opens with Justin Fields, Justin Herbert the pervert, Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, as well as Breece Hall. Interesting to see where Breece Hall's ADP settles. It's going to take some time, but I feel like Breece Hall is probably going to fall to the back end of the 4th or the early 5th, and it feels like Dalvin Cook's going to start creeping into the 6th round. So we're up on the clock here. Pollard, Hill, and Smith. Now again, we have reached a point in the draft where the running backs are kind of gross, right? I get why some people like Kenneth Walker. I get why some people like Sanders. But in reality, I know Walker played great in Seattle, but they have Charbonnet. So really, what's the difference between them and the guys below them? To me, not much. So I think I'd rather either go with a quarterback, tight end, or a wide receiver here. Best quarterbacks available, Lamar Jackson, Joe Shiesty, Trevor Lawrence. Best tight end available, TJ Hawkinson. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I kind of am not down on Hawkinson. I just don't really feel like he's a guy that will win me my league, right? I feel like a guy like Kittle, like Waller, like Pitts, kind of have the upside to go bananas, right, and finish as the number 1 tight end. I just don't think Hawkinson can do that. Normally, you have to draft Hawkinson around ahead of those guys. So looking at the receivers, Debo, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, as well as Drizzy Drake London. Now, I've been someone that is adamantly against drafting Debo Samuel, but in the 4th round, in the late 4th round, I'm fine taking him. I think he's a risk. I don't think he's going to pay off. Normally, I will draft Normally, I'll draft D-Hop or Wiki DJ Moore, Drizzy Drake London, McLaurin ahead of him, Christian Watson. But since he fell, I want you guys to understand that while I may not like a given player, at a certain point, if you waited so long, I would be comfortable taking them, right? I think Debo's in a great offense. I just worry about the fact that there are so many cooks in the kitchen there. They got Debo, Ayuk, they got McCaffrey, they got Kittle. How valuable can Debo truly be in this offense? Again, he's a great player, and I'm a lot more comfortable having Debo as my wide receiver 3 compared to my wide receiver 2, or in some spots, some people might have him as their wide receiver 1, which feels gross. So after Debo, Dameon Pierce, Lamar Jackson, Wiki DJ Moore, TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller, Rachaad White, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, Kenneth Walker, as well as Joe Shiesty. So we're back up on the clock here. Best running backs available would be Miles Sanders, Alexander Mattison, J.K. Dobbins, James Conner, Cam Akers, Alvin Kamara. The question is, by the time we get to pick again, how confident are we in the running backs? So what you want to do during drafts is look at the draft board, right? Figure out how many teams have the certain positions you're looking for, right? So there are a couple teams here that don't have running backs. 2 teams don't have running backs. So we know it's very likely that they take at least 1, maybe even 2 running backs. This team only has 1 running back, so they're very likely to go with another running back. Same with this team. So a bunch of teams need running backs. So by the time we come back to pick, we might be 4, 5, 6 running backs down off of this list by the time we get to go. And I don't necessarily feel super confident in a guy like Alvin Kamara in the 6th round. So I think we're going to pull the trigger on running back here. So many people are super high on Miles Sanders. He is currently banged up, though. He's out for Friday's game, may miss preseason. Kind of scary dealing with that groin injury, and you don't want him to double pump you in the ass. So I'm not going to be drafting Miles Sanders here. We're going to go with, I like Madison, I like Connor, I like Dobbins. It's really close. I don't like Dobbins, but I like Dobbins' situation. Even though I'm worried about Monken being there, than being more pass heavy. I'd probably lean James Conner here, if I'm being honest with you. Akers, Connor, all really close to me. We're going to go James Conner. I get there's clear injury risk with James Conner. I forgot how to fucking speak for a second. But when Kyler Murray hasn't played, James Conner has been dominant, and I think this is a great situation for James Conner to be in, even though on paper it's significantly worse, right? If you're just thinking about it, like, I would much rather have Kyler under center for the Cardinals, but in terms of James Conner's production, it's almost better with a different quarterback. After Conner, we see D-Hop, Miles Sanders, George Kittle, Drizzy Drake London, Alexander Mattison, J.K. Dobbins, David Montgomery, Brandon Ayuk, Trevor Lawrence, Alvin Kamara, Dallas Goedert, and Christian Watson. So now it is time to go hammer time on the wide receiver position. I think Kyle Pitts is interesting here. The quarterbacks at this point are just very evidently not worth a 6th-round pick. I like Watson more than most people. I like Tua more than most people. But in the 6th fucking round, you would have to be crazy to do that. We're going to go wide receiver. We're going to go with Deontay Johnson in this slot. Huge fan of Deontay Johnson. Really big fan of the amount of targets he's going to see in this offense. I know George Pickens is the quote-unquote sexier player in that offense, right? Because he makes those crazy reach back like 1-3 plays. But Deontay Johnson's going to be the guy seeing a majority of the targets. If DJ wasn't there, I probably would have went with Tyler Lockett in my pocket. Skirt. After Deontay Johnson, we see Mike Williams, DeAndre Swift, Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown, Mike Evans, Cam Akers, Deshaun Watson, Dalvin Cook, Michael Pittman, and Christian Kirk. So again, we are in this range where I'm kind of feeling almost catcalled by Kyle Pitts. He's hissing at me from across the street, and I'm ready to draft Kyle Pitts here. I get why people are nervous about Kyle Pitts, but the thing is, while Kyle Pitts may have fucked you over last season, he did it at a much higher price, right? He's going in the 7th, the 8th, the 9th round of some drafts because people are scared shitless to draft Kyle Pitts. I get that there's the downside. Maybe he ends up blowing your fantasy football roster up, but guess what? It's a lot easier to cut Kyle Pitts when you drafted him in the 7th round compared to drafting him in the 3rd round, right? So if Kyle Pitts ends up sucking this year, I'm fine cutting bait with him, but if you drafted him in the 3rd round, you almost feel obligated to just hold him until the wheels completely fall off. After Kyle Pitts, we see Isaiah Pacheco, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, JSN, Javonte Williams, Treylon Burks, Gabe Davis, James Let Him Cook, Jahan Dotson, 49ers, Elijah Moore, and A.J. Dillon. Back up on the clock here. The quarterbacks have gone relatively quickly. I think that's going to be kind of the normal for a lot of home leagues. Something to note, in your actual home league, there are going to be people that may have pulled the trigger on, for instance, Hurts in the 3rd round, and they might want to draft Daniel Jones in the 8th round, right? They might want to get that second quarterback. It doesn't make any sense. You should not do that, but people will do that. It's the same thing with tight ends. People pull the trigger in the 4th on Darren Waller, and then in the 9th round draft David Njoku. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense, but people do it. They're worried about having that backup tight end that they need, when in reality, you need to worry about the depth pieces on your roster at running back and wide receiver. So while we won't go Daniel Jones with this pick, it's very evident that we need a quarterback by the 10th round, because at that point, the 10th round is when people's brains start spinning. They don't know as many players on the board, and they might just reach for a backup quarterback. So we are going to go with a running back here. We're going to go with Khalil Herbert. Him and Antonio Gibson are very close in my rankings. You could go with either of them. Gibson, the safer pick. Herbert, the higher upside player. So we're going to lean with the upside here. Herbert in the Chicago Bears offense. This is going to be a team that likes to run the ball a decent amount. Herbert, to me, is the RB1. We saw him flash in that game and preseason last week. Obviously, you don't want to take everything from preseason and just take it as fact, right? Herbert's going to clearly be the number 1 running back. He's going to be a workhorse. Of course, he's not going to be a workhorse, but to me is the leader in that backfield. After Herbert, George Pickens, Jordan Addison-Ray, who got a concussion. Hopefully he's okay. Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith-Schuster, Buffalo Bills, Brian Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Odell Beckham Jr., Quentin Johnston, as well as Cortland Sutton. So we are going to go with one more pick, and then we're going to jump onto the train of a quarterback here. Michael Thomas, Jacoby Myers, Rashad Master, Bateman, Zay Flowers, Sky Moore. Michael Thomas has been a guy that I have been in on for fantasy football. This is another guy that has immense risk, right? Based upon what we've seen out of Michael Thomas the last couple of years, there's a chance that Michael Thomas plays 2 games, gets hurt, fucking lacing his cleats up, he's drinking Gatorade, he chokes, and he's out for the season. That's a legitimate possibility. But there's also the possibility he plays 14 games, 12 games, very valuable for those games. Derek Carr feeds him the ball. Michael Thomas commands targets. He just does. So if he's able to stay healthy, I think he could be a great pick in the 9th round. Sure. Is he risky? 100%. But when I already have Hill, Smith, Samuel, and Deontay Johnson, I'm willing to take more risks. I also like Zay Flowers, Rashad Master, Bateman, Sky Moore in this spot as well. So if Michael Thomas wasn't there, I definitely would have been fine going with one of those guys. After we went ahead and got Miss Y'all, Michael Thomas, slant man on our team, we got Antonio Gibson, Samaje P. Ryan, Jamal with 2 A's, Williams, Zay Flowers, Zach Charbonnet, Sky Moore, Jacoby Myers, Jeff Wilson, Rashad Master, Bateman, Jack McKinnon, Nico Collins, and Jameson Williams. Nico, cousin, let's go bowling. So we're going quarterback here. Again, realistically, you want to wait as long as possible to pull that trigger if you are the only team without a quarterback. The big problem is people will take backup quarterbacks. It might not happen in this simulation of a draft, but in a real draft, that will happen. Especially if you're in a league that's more casual. If you're in a experienced league with people that are putting hundreds of dollars into this, say your league's like a $500 buy-in, then probably everyone's very serious. No one's going to go crazy bananas and draft a second quarterback. But that's not necessarily who a majority of leagues are. That's not what a majority of leagues' identity is. A lot of leagues are just, hey, I'm playing with my buddies from work, playing with my buddies from college, high school, right? And in those leagues, people do crazy shit. And that's just what is going to happen. So I'm going to go with a quarterback here. Best quarterbacks available: Danny Dimes, Vanilla Vic, Kirko Chains, Geno Smith, Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff. We're going to go Danny Dimes here. I'm a huge fan of Danny Dimes. I'm a huge fan of this Giants offense. Daniel Jones has insane rushing upside week in and week out. We know how important rushing is for fantasy football. The addition of Darren Waller definitely helps his passing game. Brian Daboll really molded him into a much better quarterback. And they also have the best wide receiver core for Daniel Jones' career. They have Wan'Dale Robinson. They have Jalen Hyatt. They have Isaiah Hodgins. I know these aren't like these top of the line names, but this guy has been drugged through the mud with these garbage wide receivers over the last couple of years. And last year, even with a ragtag group, he still performed. After Danny Dimes, we see Adam Thielen, Rashad Penny, David Njoku, Devin 2 Chains, his teammate Raheem Mostert. The 11th opens with Devin Singletary, Alan Lazard, the Eagles defense, Damian Harris, and Evan Ingram. Did you guys see that some, I don't even know what the word would be, but on the Jets thing, they had this guy, the Hard Knocks, they had this guy come in and basically prophesize that it was going to be the Jets versus the 49ers in the Super Bowl and that the Jets would win. Wow, right? Wow, the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl. This guy told them. It was at the Jets fucking training facility. Of course they're going to tell them that the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl. If they went to the Panthers facility, they would have told the Panthers they were going to win the Super Bowl, even though the Panthers are a dog shit team right now. And then guess what? People are so dumb, they bet the most bet team to win the Super Bowl over the last day is the Jets. How fucking stupid are people? And these are the people that you're playing fantasy football with. The people that are stupid enough to throw down some bread on things like that. So and again, if you think the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl, that's fine. But people are betting it because they saw this thing on TV. People are fucking crazy. Bitches be tripping. I don't even remember what that's from. But that's a quote. Tony Pollard, James Conner, Khalil Herbert are running backs. We definitely need some more running backs on this squad. Going to go with Tank Bigsby. It's going to tell us it was a reach, but they can give me a nice reach around because I think Tank Bigsby is in for a huge year in Jacksonville. I think if something happens to ETN, wheels are up for him. If nothing happens to ETN, he's going to get some goal line work, get some pass catching opportunities. I want Tank Bigsby on every single one of my fantasy teams after Tank. The Cowboys defense: Elijah Mitchell, Ezekiel Elliott, Pat Freiermuth, Tyler, yeah, Boyd, Rondale Moore, Cole Kmet, Jalen Warren, Greg Dulcich, Darnell, here comes the Mooney, Dalton Schultz, and Tyler Algier. Back up on the clock here. Still waiting to go defense and kicker. If you want, with Daniel Jones, you can pair him with a guy like Anthony Richardson. They have two different buys, both big rushing upside. And then you don't have to worry about playing Richardson the first couple of weeks. Play Dimes. And then once Richardson starts heating up, like I think he will, then you can throw him into your lineup. I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do, though normally I don't draft two quarterbacks. If he falls, though, with our last pick, I'm willing to take him. Probably going to go, we only have 4 running backs, so we're going to go with another running back here. Kenny Gainwell, Roschon Johnson, Kendre Miller, Jerome Ford, Zamir White is the pick here. Now, obviously, if you're watching this and Josh Jacobs stops his holdout, then Zamir White will be about as useless as it gets. But if Josh Jacobs continues to hold out, he holds strong, he ain't folding, then Zamir White has some serious fantasy value, and his ADP is going to rise quicker than your cock after you take a Viagra. After Zamir White, we see Donta Foreman, Tyler Higbee, Kendre Miller, Ron Rodgers, DJ Chark, baby Chark, Kenneth Gainwell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chuba Hubbard, Gerald Everett, and Roschon Johnson. Final player onto the squad, we're going to go with Anthony Richardson. Again, normally I don't preach the 2 quarterback draft strategy, but if I can get Richardson and Daniel Jones, and I can just, after the first couple of weeks, play them based upon matchup, I think Anthony Richardson literally could be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football just because of the rushing upside alone. After Anthony Richardson, Rashee Rice came off the board. Couple of kickers, couple of defenses, Kirko Chains, Geno Smith, Jerome Ford, Romeo Doubs, Gus Edwards, Cordero Patterson, and Kareem Hunt. We're going to go with our defense first. So for defense, doesn't matter how good the defense is, right? The Patriots might have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Week 1, I'm pretty sure they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. Then they play the Dolphins. Then they play the Jets. They might get their shit packed in those games. The Ravens, they play the Texans. They play C.J. Stroud, his first ever game. You want a defense that is playing a not-so-hot offense week 1 and then rotate every single week if the next matchup isn't that great. There's one defense that has a couple of good games in a row. So if you have that defense, then obviously you can keep holding on to them. I make videos every single week during the season on which defenses to start. After that, we see Juwan Johnson and Michael Gallup, bunch of kickers, bunch of defenses. Then we're going to go with our kicker, my favorite kicker in the NFL, my old bitch lame, but my young ho Koo. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. To recap our team: Danny Dimes, our running backs, our Tony Pollard and James Conner, our receivers, our Tyreek Hill and Devontae Smith, our tight end is Kyle Pitts, our flex is Debo. Still feels kind of gross to me, but I get why I took him based upon where he fell. The Ravens defense, Young Ho Koo. Our bench is comprised of Deontay Johnson, Khalil Herbert, the pervert, Michael Thomas, Tank Bigsby, Zamir White, and Anthony Richardson. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought about our team and who is your target to select when you have the 6th overall pick. Who are you looking for in the first round? Let me know in the comments. I love you guys all so much. Make sure you guys check out Manscaped. Again, link in the video description. Love you guys all. Have a great one. As always, good boy.